Hi everyone, it's Peter from Pssound, and in this video, the first video in 2025, and Happy New Year by the way guys. We are starting a new year, and hopefully it's going to be a great year for everybody. I always say I don't want anything else on it other than just a year just as good as the last year, or just a bit better, or never have a worse year than the previous year. Then we should be good, right? So this is going to be the first video of the year, and this is going to be slightly new to many of you because I started a new movement on our friendly meetings in Brighton that we organize. I looked back the other day and I think we organized more than 20-25 meetings in the last many years. We have around 4 or 5 meetings in the year usually. If we can do something during the summer, that's rare, but this year we had meetings in the summer too. But usually by the end of the year, you know, everybody has a chance to wind down, and we can easily find time to organize these friendly meetings we have in UK. Because during the summer we have competitions, we have just traveling and so many things happening that we struggle to find time during the summer season. So the point of this is that I started a new movement where I told to the guys on the meeting that I would like everybody to listen to as many cars as possible. That's the point of the event, really. So the guys can learn from each other how they achieve their goals. Not every car has had influence by Pssound other than, you know, the guys watch our content, but not every single car that comes to our meeting is built by us or tuned by us. So the guys come into these meetings, of course, can hear many different cars, as well as those cars that we take. And it helps them to get ideas. And even if they do their projects themselves and they play around with the tuning, if they want to carry on their journey, then they get a chance to make their cars better. However, I found that some people get so, I don't know what to call it. Like, some people get so crazy when it comes to playing with the DSP that they enjoy the journey more than the actual end result. And I can also see that many people struggle. Just because car audio is a field where you can buy a DSP. Anybody can buy a DSP and you can start playing with it. But the problem is that you are just playing with it. I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad about it, but I just try to base this on all those cars that come to us that we have to tune and help people to finally get an amazing system. And I can see that even from shops, we don't get cars that would come to us where I would say, you know what, I can't do anything to it. You have an amazing system. That never ever happens. And until the percentage of bad sounding systems compared to the cars that sound amazing is what it is right now, till then I can confidently say that people, even DIYers or shop owners, they just play with DSPs. If you think about like tuning an engine for car performance, you can buy the softwares, but how many people play with it? That's a completely different field where people don't want to play with it because they understand the risk of things. And ultimately, everybody wants the same thing. They want an amazing performing system, just like with a car. You want a car that's going to run really well on the track if you have a race car, quarter-mile car. But over there, they don't play. They just go to the right person and they get it tuned. Of course, even over there are differences between people, how they can tune an engine and what they can get out of it. But in car audio, the funny thing is that most of the people like just fiddling with it and playing with it. And when it comes to the opportunity to get the system tuned, they're not really keen to get it done. Even if I've been advertising this now for years, that in UK and when I travel around the world, people can see my schedule. I always tell people to let me know in time, that I can help. We can schedule it and I can help tuning everybody's cars who need help. Don't you want to be happy to listen to a system in a car that sounds mind-blowing? Answer this. You're not going to say no. Then why don't you find professionals to get your car tuned? right? And I'm definitely one of those who always says that I have 100% guarantee. If I get in a car, if I get it tuned, you hear the difference. And if you say you don't really see much improvement, and if you don't want to drive home with my tune, no problem. I always say that I expect no payment from anybody for my work, that I just did it what I did, and then you can drive home with what you came with. And that has never happened. So again, on YouTube I don't share plenty of videos really emphasizing the importance of tuning. That's the reason of this video as well. And the movement I started on these meetings, that I told to the guys when they listen to each other's cars, they have to nominate a car at the end of the event that they think should deserve a tuning session more than anything. And I do that for free for that person who the others nominate. Of course, some of you could now think that, oh, okay, you know, I'm gonna play it well, and then I'm gonna get the highest number of nominations. Why not? Show your car to as many people as you can, to everybody. And then surely somebody will say that, you know, that car should really, really get a tuning session, because they are interested what they could get out of a system that doesn't perform well. So yes, there are a mixture of people who struggle and they can't find anybody. They struggle financially, they can't afford a tuning session maybe, although I can see that what, for example, I charge for a tuning session, it's a fraction of the price that everybody needs to spend on the whole equipment layout, on material cost, and the time to build cars. Or if you get a system from another shop, then you already spend so much money. Why don't you get the best out of it? Honestly. So the last meeting we had in November, which is not the last, that was the one before we had in December. We had a meeting in November where the guys nominated Jonathan's car. He built a car himself, and actually it's quite funny that he had already contacted us to help him with certain aspect of the installation in the future. But the guys on the meeting nominated his car. He got the highest number of votes to see what we could get out of that system. So in this short video after this, you will have a short feedback from Jonathan explaining how he managed to get to the point where he was before we tuned the car, and of course you will hear his opinion about what we could get out of it. So from now on you will hear from him. I didn't have time to do a demo part of it. We were short on time because we had another car in the afternoon to tune as well, and we spent a lot of time with Jonathan, not because the car needed a lot of time to tune it, but I also made sure that we spent time together when I could show certain aspects and certain things in the system to him, what now the system is able to do, as opposed to where he was with it himself without any help. So at the end of the day, we had to let him go, and I'm sure we will see him in the future because we will have to do some work to his system when it comes to installation. And then I will find time to do a demo video as well, which is only just for inspiration. I always tell people not to take it too seriously. Sometimes I use my phone, sometimes I use my binaural microphones, and it's good for inspiration at least. But I'm sure that now Jonathan's words will help you to understand why tuning is so important. So let's cut and straight onto Jonathan's feedback.
I'm going to record you because we will want to remember this moment.
We will.
We will remember this moment. I think I have roughly around 20 tuning sessions a year for, people who have systems not built by us. And now you are one of them who gets the before and after experience. Although we haven't recalled your old preset yet, but you know what it was like.
I do.
You definitely know what it was like. So I left you here now for a bit. You listen to quite a few different type of songs. What are you experiencing?
So I'm, to be honest, blown away. So compared to what it was, compared to what it is now, is night and day. And whilst I had what I thought was a half decent tune on it prior to changing the front end, performs so much differently, even at the best I could get it previously.
Yeah.
There's so much more authority in the bass, and I'm not just loud, it's authoritative, it's timed, everything just plays as it should.
Together.
And the center image is, now I had a center image, now it wandered, it's rock solid.
Yeah.
I'm massively impressed.
So when you were playing around with the DSP yourself, and I know with Helix it's not difficult to understand how it works. For some people it's a bit overwhelming because you have so many options and settings. But what was your starting point when you saw the DSP and you started to play with it? Did you check their online tutorials, or where did you find information about how to play with it?
So a lot of it came from your channel. Some other channels dotted around, YouTube. I looked at the Audio Frog tuning guides as well, just as a general kind of how you should approach tuning more generally. But a lot of it has come from both the Patreon side and your channels, and one or two others that could be considered half decent resources. And then it was just a case of playing around and seeing what things did.
Did you use the auto-tune function in it?
No, funnily enough, I couldn't get that to work. I couldn't get the results I would expect.
So what did you use to measure?
So I was using REW with the UMIC 1 mic.
Yep.
And again, just following a few tutorials on how to get that set up, and then I would use the... Because
I saw that you had many settings, many EQs applied in the DSP. You went...
crazy.
All out, yeah.
I probably, out of all of those, so there was 10, well, almost 10 in the system. I've probably got triple that on my laptop at home. And there was probably 2...
Oh, you mean the presets saved?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And there was probably 2 where you could say, okay, I could listen to those, but not happily. And it's been a trial and error.
I think for somebody who is a bit technical, I think it's also kind of like an exciting phase when you can play with it and you can hear the differences, how big differences you can make by different settings and adjustments in the DSP. And what we were talking about, that some people actually enjoy it.
Yes, I think for myself that there's an element of mastery to it. So it's I can get my head around this, and I can pick that up and I can do it. So there was certainly a small piece of that, but I guess for me there was more the sort of the challenge of trying to get to where it should be, to get the performance that I knew was in the system, that I just needed to learn how to unlock. And it was almost like finding that special sauce,
which sadly most people never find.
No, and I can't say I found it. Although now it's certainly there.
Well, I'm going to make a video out of it, so by now when people are watching this, I will have an introduction and they will understand what we've done here and how we got here. And yes, I share a couple of videos regarding the importance of tuning, but not enough. That's why I just want to record this part as well, you sharing your experience, because that's more powerful than me talking about that, oh yeah, it was a successful tuning session and then he's happy. Next.
Yeah, there's so much more to it. There really is. And, I think what myself included and a lot of other people underestimate is the time and the background knowledge that you need. Because it's one thing to be given the tools and you can play around, but actually you need to understand the interplays. So where you adjust one thing, what that does to the rest of the system and why it's important. And you can quite quickly tie yourself in knots, even when you think about gains or phase and things like that. You can absolutely get lost. And
overcomplicated.
Absolutely, you need someone who knows, who's got those rock solid foundations that you can then build a tune on.
Some of the guys online share videos highlighting the importance of tuning, and they also say the same, that it's one thing to play with the DSP, but there's only one way to tune, and that is to tune correctly. And it's not such rocket science yet. There are not many people globally who can actually do a correct tune. By that we mean that, first of all, I always say the most important thing, that a system has good spectral balance. Even if the staging is not quite accurate, spectral balance has to be established, that you have the equal amount of top end, mid-range, lower mid-range and sub-bass, those have to be nicely balanced, and the overall system has to play in a, with a good spectral balance. That's number one. Even if your staging is off or there's no staging at all. Like back in the day when we had passive systems and we didn't even have time alignment, we didn't have none of that, we could still get a decent sounding system.
Yeah.
Then, getting spectral balance right, that's one thing. And second thing, getting a system that's technically correct, where you have a well-balanced stage in front of you, where you have equal sounding left and right. They are balanced out. If you have technical competition disc from which we haven't even gone into, then when they say left, right, then it sounds similar. Instruments sound similar. Then you have a good proportion of the stage when it comes to position. That center is solid. Then you have left center, right center. That's easy to identify. It's not just, a foggy, rough position. In most cases, it's actually those cars who come to us for tuning session, stage doesn't exist. It's if you shut your eyes, you can't say that, oh, center is there. You can't say that. It's just, it's coming from here or it's coming from there. We had extreme starting points. Yours wasn't terrible to listen to, but we could establish with Eddie that there was no life in the system. It was very compressed. Mid-range was really lacking detail, and then especially because you have the front sub rear sub situation, they were not working together at all.
No.
And once you pull everything together, speakers play balanced left to right, speakers are timed to each other, everything comes together, and that's it. Okay, rear field, we haven't got into that with you yet, but probably you can tell that they are playing.
Yes.
We are playing them differential, and then that can give so much more pleasure to listening to anything in a car.
Absolutely.
Regardless of competition expectations or not, because on competition they hate rear feel. Well, it's not expectation, so it's not like they hate it, they don't need it, because it doesn't have to be there. But for daily demoing, I always use differential rear feel in every car.
It certainly adds something, and that's something you can't always put your finger on, but it's certainly there's an atmosphere.
You only know when you turn it off, and then you're like, oh.
Yeah.
People tend to give me the impression when I turn the rear feel off that everything becomes just a bit boring without it, because it really puts you in a different size of space and it gives you different ambience with a differential rear feel than not having it.
It's almost like it flattens out. It's it's certainly, the rear field certainly brings you into it.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's going to be the part when we're going to jump out, and then we will look at the actual install, because you will have to explain it, how you achieved what. With me.
Okay.
All right, so you have to come with me and explain what you've done in here.
Okay, so in the boot, we've got a sealed box set within the rear spare wheel well, if you can call it that. It's an indent in the floor, I'd say.
It's not quite deep.
Oh no, not at all. It doesn't even get a Slim Jim.
Yeah, you have big exhaust running under there.
Indeed. So fiberglass box, self-contained, sealed, running the Focal K2 Power KX30. That itself is being powered by a Helix M1X.
Yep.
We then have a M1 powering the front sub, which you'll see, with the rest of the system being taken care of by the Helix V8 Mark II.
Which is hiding underneath.
It's under its separate layer, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, just staying nice and toasty in that area.
Do you use the boot for daily?
So not so much for daily. I wanted, the build was done, so once I build the grille, which I'm still doing, was done so I could cover the windows, and then I had usable boot space. The dogs mainly travel in the boot now. They're designed for the back seat because clearly you can't have them in the boot.
Well, you just need a practical panel that goes over
This
everything.
is it.
And
so these are all still the sort of finishing touches. This is certainly version 1 of the new build, as it were. So it's the second system this car's had in less than
But this is your first big attempt?
It's the first proper attempt.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Absolutely.
Front end.
So front end, we've got...
You can go to the other side, and then you can explain from there.
Okay, so...
Whoop.
Here we go. So So front end, we've got Focal K2 power component set, so mid and tweet. Mids are in the door. I know about the whole hatred of door speakers.
That's all right. They work okay.
We've got plans. We've got plans.
But they work okay. They are not working bad. Yeah.
So they're pretty good. Obviously, 2-ohm driver, so maximising what comes off of the V8 there. And then I've got the K2 Power M. I think it's the M series.
Is the latest.
Mids.
Yep.
Absolutely, which are a recent addition in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, because originally you just had the two-way running.
It was two-way running. I had a set of ground zeros. But they weren't that great. They were capable, but nowhere near what these would deliver.
Yeah, it was definitely worth to put the mid-range in and go fully active.
Absolutely.
And then this is also a later edition, isn't it?
Yeah. So that was that particular sub. So the front sub was built. The enclosure was built probably 3 or 4 months ago in the building process. So I only actually finished the system entirely about 2 months ago. The driver itself used to be in the back in a tiny enclosed, tiny enclosure, and it's there purely because I just needed a 10-inch speaker until I got something better, which we know I need to look at.
Yeah, you just wanted to see how a system could be pulled together when it's fully tuned, and that's now an important part of the system. Did you have to cut the carpet underneath it, or you just built onto the top of it?
So with this particular one, other than the width of the carpet, there's no room to be gained. There's barely any.
So you didn't cut the carpet?
No.
So you built
built on top this time, yeah.
Okay.
Because there's very little padding in this particular car.
When you have a permanent final solution, then we will definitely see a nice practical panel in front of it as well. Currently it's just...
Absolutely. So that's V1, like there will be a second version that will be built to better spec.
Wicked.
Now after you could see Jonathan's system, the short little walk around we had with him, this is going to be the last part of the video. This is the part that usually you can find on our Patreon channel, that you can find a link to in the description, where we share as many RTA evaluations of the projects we build as possible, which gives a beautiful understanding of what really matters when it comes to car audio. Those guys who watch the content over there, after watching so many projects that we build, they see where the speakers are located, what applications we have with them. After a while, it becomes clear to everybody what response you can also expect from speakers, which is super important, because if you don't get the response from the speakers in given locations and applications, you can do magic with the DSP at the end. You are not going to be able to fix it. So in this one now, I'm quickly going to go through a session, what goes down and how a system comes together. How we had 39 measurements. Okay, so first of all, you always have to understand what happens when you put a speaker in a cabin. That speaker in a different cabin, in a different location, is going to measure completely differently. If you were just holding that speaker, in your hand, or in the middle of a living room, where you don't have reflections, when you don't have such a big effect of the space, the surrounding space on the response, it will measure very differently. But as soon as you throw it into a car, oh yeah, things change big time. That's why tuning, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video as well, tuning by a professional person who has, unquestionable knowledge and can deliver results, is most important part at the end of any project. Otherwise, you will never know the full potential of your system, and then you will go into assumptions what you should change if you don't like something. So, for example, when we measure the tweeter at the beginning with a safe crossover, usually I put a 1 kHz crossover on a tweeter and just measure it, what it does in the cabin, it gives me an insight into what we are dealing with. So this is the passenger side tweeter in listening position, and I can see that it's very hot between 2 and 3K, but that's easy. Whenever you have peaks, that's easy to treat. When you have big dips, that's the problem. That's when you have big cancellation, that's the difficult part that usually you cannot fix. Then you have to look at a different location for a speaker. This tweeter up to 13.5 or more like 15k, it's perfectly fine. Then it rolls off a little bit, which is perfectly natural. Actually, this response so linear all the way up to 15k is very, very good. That bit of roll off is something that you see in every car. In some cars even more drastic. Some speakers start to roll off at like 8-9k, way more drastically, going down very steep. That's when you struggle to get detail out of a system. That's why tweeter aiming for me is very, very important to get the response out of a driver. More important than worrying about, like so many people these days on forums worry about, oh, reflections and I have double image and this and that. Screw that. You know, some people are only looking at the system design like competition expectations. Yeah, you can have the best focus on the planet, but if you don't have response, you don't have detail, then what do you do? So response is more important than worrying about these reflections, because guess what? In a car, you have reflections left, right, center, everywhere. So don't stress too much about it. Then there's the other side, tweeter on driver side. Yes, it's closer to us. It has more level, and yes, it looks very peaky in certain areas. That's what usually makes tweeters sound harsh, and that's when people jump into quick assumptions that, oh, this 4K tweeter is very, very harsh, I want to change it. Yes, if it's not tuned properly, all you will hear is these peaks. But when it comes to extension of top end, it was there. So that's all I needed. And what I was looking at, how low they come alive, like 1.6K is definitely playing on both sides. Happy days. And then mids. We were looking at the mids, and what response we get from a mid-range is equally super important, because everything is going to be tied to the mid-range. When it comes to mid-range performance, to me, is something that depends more on installation. And of course, you need the right driver, because if the driver is not capable to play low enough or high enough to integrate the speakers below or above to it, then yeah, that's a limitation of a speaker. So like a dome mid-range to me doesn't have a space in a car. It doesn't make any sense, because they cannot play low enough. The acoustical problems with mid-bass, especially low down in like door locations, start way earlier in the frequency range, lower down. Then you would be able to integrate it to a mid-range up high that cannot play lower than 700-800 hertz. That's why a dome mid-range just doesn't do it for me. As much as they are very dynamic in the mid-range and they do something amazing from 700-800 hertz up to, I don't know, any frequency range you can play up to like 4-5 kilohertz, that's okay. But you cannot play low enough. So, for example, having this, even this, they call it a 3-inch, but to me it's an undersized 3-inch driver from 4Cal. And this latest K2 Power mid-range. And in the given installation, you know, I would say that we have acceptable response from like 230 hertz on passenger side, which is further away. And on the other side as well, it comes alive around 230. But I wouldn't recommend to cross these mids so crazy low. But of course, it depends on listening levels. If you listen to music at acceptable, not crazy loud levels like 95 dB maximum, or even if you go into like 100 dB peaks, dynamic peaks, you could cross it low at like 250. But if you want a system that's going to play at higher dynamic levels as well, if you want to play electronic music, rock music, and you want to, you know, get carried away at times, and if you want to go up to like 110, 115 high peaks, send the system full tilt, I would recommend to cross it higher than where it comes alive. And it plays up to, you know, 4K on both sides acceptably well. It's a bit weak here, but then of course everything is going to look different once you put a target curve on a speaker and then you see what you actually need from it. But all these peaks and dips, as you can see, that's what makes the response very out of balance, and then it makes it very muffled. Like between 250 and 700 hertz we have a lot of energy. It makes the mid-range very muffled and warm, but it's not clean. You know, it's definitely not natural. Here we have a narrow cancellation. Yeah, that's when people go into, you know, complete meltdown that, oh geez, what am I going to do with that? Yes, if you are chasing perfection, then you would have to relocate the speaker. You can't fix it with DSP. That's definitely a cancellation point, but at least it's narrow enough. You know, it happens between like 520 up to 600. It's not like the system is going to sound terrible. If this dip was like a full octave, like between 400 and 800, fully cut out, that would be a huge issue. But this you can be fine with. So, okay, I can see that with the mid-range, I have functional range somewhat between 250 up to around 4K. I can work with it. Then our favorite part, mid-bass. So mid-bass passenger side from the door. Yes, usually doors can play low because they have a lot of airspace, a lot of air volume. And that makes many people impressed. We have separate videos on YouTube as well about how much we hate doors for mid-bass. I think it's even titled something like that. You can find that video. It's very, very advised to watch it if you haven't seen it yet. And that might impress you for the first time, but when you want a really well set up well-tuned system from mid-bass, actually you don't want that range to be played between 40 and 60 hertz with great authority. From a 6.5 inch driver, it's not going to be controlled and dynamic. I always call it just like trouser flapping response. Yes, it gives you air moved by the driver, but equally it's going to move a lot, it's going to get a lot of power. It should not be played by such a small driver. But at least we can see on passenger side it plays low, it doesn't have acoustical problems up to around 110, then that's narrow, so it's not a big problem. And we have good response up to around 350, 400-ish. And that's what I mentioned earlier with the dome mids. Look at that, how weak response we get above 400 hertz. So how do people want to integrate this to a dome mid-range that's not going to play from like 700-800 hertz? You are not going to get a seamless integration. So again, you would have to relocate the mid-bass, but in many circumstances people cannot do that. They will have to stick to the OEM location because they're not going to go to the crazy extent of moving the mid-bass to the kicks, building enclosures, or doing IB, or doing any other alternative. So that's now showing beautifully that you have to have a cone mid-range that can play low enough to integrate to this driver. Then on driver side, at least if we are looking at the integration with the mid, it plays up high enough. Even that is okay up to like 460, 500-ish. But then again, you have the usual problems from a mid-bass in the door location. Although that one down in the lower mid-range and in the bass has the classic driver side cancellations, and it's very weak between 120-ish and 160, not super wide, so it's so-so. But like this, that between 70 and 90, it's very weak. That's like happens in like 80% of the cars. Again, it's not the speaker's problem, it's location related. That's where you can find many videos, many other people explaining these phenomena, that it happens purely based on the location in the car, because you have the direct wave hitting you first, then you also have the reflected energy coming back, and then when the direct and the reflected energy, the wavelength, it's all based on the wavelength. When those two energies meet, they are not in time and not in phase, and then that's going to cancel out, causing this problem where you don't have energy from driver side mid-bass. Now you could say that, okay, Pete, I don't want a bassy system, a very loud system, or I don't even have a sub. Can I play the mid-bass down that low? Of course, you can play it. You just have to be careful how far you push it within excursion limits. And both of them would play low, but then they will also introduce a lot more energy into the door. You will have to soundproof the shit out of it if you can ever actually get rid of all the vibrations and resonances. But in a well-designed system, I wouldn't play this setup with these mid-bass drivers below 90 hertz, because you can see below 95 you have big problems on driver side anyway. So this is one of the reasons why a front sub is very beneficial. And Jonathan had one, because he understood the situation, and just because he knew that he won this tuning session, he installed that, as you could see or hear. We mentioned he installed that sub, even if it's not the best driver, and I'm sure in the future he's going to upgrade. But it was very beneficial for him now to have even just that driver there as a front sub, because then we could integrate the system way, way better. So front sub, oh yeah, we had very different gain structure with the front sub and a lot of level, but we could see that we have no problem up to 100 Hertz with it. So it's just going to cover that area where we had problem with the mid bass, and it comes alive pretty good from like 32. It's definitely solid from 35 Hertz up to 100-ish. Perfect. That's all we need from a front sub. And then the rear sub also plays pretty good. One thing that was surprising in his car, that usually a hatchback like his would peak at around 45, 40, 48, and his car was peaking stupidly low. It was unusual, which is not a bad thing. The low end is going to be easier to deliver. And down to 20 Hertz, we definitely had pretty good response. Then it drops off, it rolls off. It's not an IB application, but from a sealed box, that's perfectly fine. So we will have to balance just that response from the sub, and I can see that I will be able to integrate them somewhere around 45, 50 Hertz. But we had to check whether that dip is there caused by a bit of a cancellation, or it's just the fact that you have peaks on either side of it, down there and up there as well. That in those areas of the frequency range, you just get more output from the sub in the cabin, highlighted in the cabin. But again, like imagine if now the front sub wasn't here, so you have this response from the rear sub, hardly any energy above 50 Hertz compared to what it's doing below, and then you try to integrate it to the driver's side mid bass, which, okay, the sub level now is crazy, but like you had problems here. How would you integrate these? You would have to cross at like 50 Hertz, because then the sub is not doing anything above that. And we had occasions like this, and we had to explain to the owner that, hey, I know you want to turn the system up louder, you just won't be able to go crazy loud because the mid bass is going to crap out. Of course you have more headroom with the sub, but you cannot really utilize it, because if you turn the sub louder, then it's just going to be very overpowering, very overwhelming, and it's just a lot of bass from the back. Perfect integration as such, when you go above that sub level, is not going to happen. But having the front sub will definitely give us the opportunity to pull the system together, to be able to have dynamic lower bass, upper bass, and kick bass, and everything is going to just work out perfectly. So after the initial measurements, I can look at how I can integrate the speakers, and I always suggest to start with the mid-range. Everything is going to tie to your mid-range in a three-way system, or if you only have a two-way front end, then start with either, if you have a wideband, start with the wideband and then tune the mid bass to it, then the sub, or if you have a mid bass and a tweeter, then start with the mid bass that's playing the widest range, and then everything else is going to be pulled to it. So from that left mid, I set up the crossover, and then I measured the mid-range. Sorry, we are at there. So all we needed from that mid-range was this. And I think we went with something like, we were targeting something like 290, but we will see once the mid-bass comes to it, 290 to, again, on the top end, we will see by the tweeter. But from this horrible roller coaster looking response, after we used the correct filters at the right places, then we got this. It's been a while when I had an RTA evaluation on YouTube, because I mentioned that usually you will find these on Patreon, because this is a lot of work. It's, yeah, 1st of January, it's 20 past 10 o'clock in the evening, and I'm taking these videos. Yeah, it's not friendly. It's not friendly to share all these things on YouTube, guys. I'm sorry for that, but if you really want to learn, you got to check out our Patreon channel, and you have hell of a lot to see there and learn there. But now I thought to share this because this is important. Again, a few times a year I have to smash the community to understand why tuning is the most important thing. So applying filters. Many people, especially old school generation people, would say not to use many filters because it's going to screw up your speaker, your phase, and they throw these big fancy sounding words around, and they don't realize that response and phase are hand in hand. Without having linear response, you will never have the phase correct either. If you have perfect response from speakers, then the phase will be just perfect as well. So EQ job is probably number one most important thing in any car. And just because some people may see EQ work from me and from many other guys I've seen in the US as well who do extensive proper tuning, yeah, many people would freak out when they see those filters in the DSP, because you will see a roller coaster. Just like you see on the actual response of the speaker, you have to get rid of those peaks and treat the dips as much as possible. Because then this is going to sound actually pretty nice. That's what I showed even to Jonathan. He was sitting in the car when I was doing this, and I showed the response to him. Even just playing ping noise, when he heard the speaker without filters, it's very harsh. Then you apply the filters and suddenly, even listening to ping noise becomes just fine. Not that we want to listen to just ping noise, but it's funny that after tuning so many cars, even if somebody just plays me ping noise in a system, I can tell if it's working well, if it was tuned well or not. Because if your system is tuned properly, all the speakers are in time and phase and the response is good, then even listening to ping noise is actually not painful. And, you know, that was passenger side mid-range. Then you can see how far off driver side mid-range is without the filters. Our job is to balance out left and right speaker responses first. So from that crazy roller coaster, then we got that. So yes, as I mentioned, get matching response as close as possible. Yes, you could tweak it forever. What you see here is 112 octave accurate response. You know, everything is going to look much better if you put a 1/3 octave smoothing on it. Look at that now. It looks so much better. And to be fair, for beginners, I wouldn't suggest to tune in any higher resolution than 1/6 if they actually understand what they are doing. Because like in that, it looks close enough. Okay, you could work on this a little bit, but that's perfectly fine compared to what we started, right? That was a mess. We don't want that. We want this from the mid-range. So once I managed to get this from the mid-range drivers, left to right, time alignment is set up, and then they work together, measure the path together, and then I work only with the mids as a pair from that point on. There's a bit of a dip here, and that's caused by, you know, driver side mid-range, where I mentioned that if you really wanted to fix that dip, you would have to relocate the speaker. But it's not a big issue. You can see it's a tiny little dip. It's not going to cause a very obvious problem in the system. So then on to tweeters. From that left tweeter, that's all we needed. Again, this shows perfectly how much more energy you get from that tweeter in that location in the cabin. It's not the speaker's fault, it's the cabin's fault. All we do with this whole tuning process is to treat the response of the environment. Just like in home audio, people think that tuning is pointless. You can't fix everything with physical room treatment. That's how, yeah, I would like to go deeper into home audio, but I know that the current generation doesn't like active setups. And then if they hear that you use a DSP and you do tuning, they freak out, they run away. However, I've seen more and more home amplifiers and receivers with built-in tuning capability. They do like an auto EQ setup, and then they call it somehow nice and sophisticated so it doesn't melt home audio people's brain down. And they don't argue that after the auto EQ, the speakers sound better. you know, EQing here or there, but it's needed even in home audio, let alone in car audio. So now you see there that that tweeter has how much more response, like at 3 kilohertz from the target that we need, you have 50, there 60, 10 dB extra. Overall, you have 10 dB extra between 2 and 4K. That's exactly why many people call tweeters harsh. And again, it's not the tweeter's fault, it's the environment that does it. Until you don't measure it correctly, you don't understand what you measured, and you don't know how to work with that, how to load the settings back into the DSP, you're just playing around, you're just making a mess. And once it's tuned well, again, even ping noise played by the tweeter just sounds natural. Then from the other side, tweeter, which was driver side, so much more sensitive and so much peakier. Oh yeah, that was super obvious when I bypassed the filters on it. Then you literally, you pull your eyes and then you move back in the seat, feeling like, whoa, it's very offensive. And then as soon as you apply the EQ work on it, you get a very matching response between left and right tweeters. You got rid of the peaks and suddenly it sounds just great. Then time alignment happened, 2 tweeters together, and it looks like we went with a 3.2 kilohertz crossover point between them. And after that we got our two-way system, because then we time aligned mid-range and tweeter together. They summed up pretty well when they were not in time and in phase. Oh yeah, and then they showed even in the measurement that they had a big cancellation at the crossover point. So I was pretty happy with what we got from mid and tweet. Of course, it's not rule of flat at this stage, but that's not an issue at all. As I said, we are doing the work in 112 octave, very accurate. And at the end, we will be able to go into finer detail with this anyway, if you have a DSP that has master EQ. So all we want is matching left and right, timing them, making all the speakers time together, sum together, and it's already, you know, like day and night difference compared to what the car was doing before. Then on to the mid bass situation. So left mid bass, after EQ work, oh, that, don't worry about that. What you see over there was actually my Honda parked behind us, and we had a pretty busy day in the shop and the guys were listening to music. I told to them to listen to moderate levels, but because the Honda has 2 18s in true IB and it's playing outside as well, it's measurable, you can see. So that's not a fault in the tuning, or it's not the actual mid bass in that Honda doing it, in the Civic doing it. It's my Honda that was parked behind us that was doing it. That's why I always suggest to everybody as well, when you tune in a quiet environment. If you tune on the street, then tune in the evening when everybody, you know, is in their houses. You don't have that much traffic. Otherwise, in mid bass and subwoofer range, you may actually measure the outside world. That can really trick you. So from left mid bass, from that mess, we got this, and then from right bass we managed to get that. So now they are matching very close, good enough, and then the pair together. And by the looks of it, we were crossing at 330 Hertz between mid bass and the mid. So that's a relatively higher crossover point for the mid-range. It's not going to struggle even at really high listening levels. And then they summed up beautifully when they were, the mid-bass to the mids were not in phase. Oh yeah, they showed that beautifully as well. So from this point on, I don't need anything else other than the freeway. And then we carry on. We keep adding the speakers to the system. Then front sub. That's where we had a lot of level with the front sub, so I had to adjust the level as well. And after EQ work, that's all we needed. It needed a bit of boosting on the upper end as well. At this stage of this tuning session, I didn't have a chance to change potentially the electronic filters in the amplifiers. I didn't want to. Quite potentially the low pass filter in the amplifier wasn't turned up all the way. So this front sub could have played higher. We could have had more level coming out of it, above 100 Hertz. But I didn't change anything on the amplifiers because I wanted John to have the ability to call the old preset back that what he came with, and then he could get an as realistic before and after comparison as possible. If I went to the amplifiers and if I changed filters, gains, or anything on the amps, then you wouldn't have a realistic comparison, before and after comparison anymore. So possibly when I see him next, when he's going to work on certain parts of the installation, when we do a full tune, let's call it a final tune, then I will make sure to go to the amps and check that the electronic filters in the amplifiers don't limit the response. If you have a switch when you can turn it to running full range, do that, because your DSP is going to take care of the rest. So again, from that huge peaky response, that's all we needed for the front sub. And it looks like we were going to 100 Hertz crossover point. And they summed up well. Same way, after time alignment, we were checking when the front sub was out of phase compared to the mid bass. That was very obvious as well. I just always save that measurement as well so I can demonstrate it to the client, because it's very, very helpful. So this point on, we have a four-way system now. Then we went on to the rear sub. So from that rear sub, we needed, actually, we needed way more level. So I had to turn the sub level up on the DSP. Again, I didn't do it on the amplifier, just to keep the before and after comparison. And I didn't EQ so much what you see over there. I turned the whole level up on the front sub. Plus, of course, it needed a bit of EQ work too. And yeah, we got completely different response from the sub. And many people get shocked when I tune a sub properly. I can easily have, 10-15 bands of EQ on a sub to treat the response. And then suddenly people realize that, holy shit, I never thought that my sub could do that and play that low. Of course it can. Until you have enough clean power, enough excursion, you can push a sub to play low enough. Of course, if it really doesn't want to play below 30 Hertz well, because of your application, let's say your ported box that is tuned to like 35 Hertz and then below 30 Hertz it drops off the cliff, don't think you can just EQ it up, because in a ported box you will lose all the control below tuning frequency and you will crap that sub out. But in a sealed box you get way better control, so you can push a sealed box to push the low end, and it's going to deal with it until you have plenty of excursion. So suddenly, yeah, this sub played just so great all the way down. Compared to that, you could see that it was rolling off below 28 Hertz, but with a bit of level game and bit of EQ work, that came up beautifully. So then after that, we had to now integrate, and it looks like I had too much level from the sub, so I had to drop it back a touch. We had pretty good integration, and we were going for 50. I think we were going with an unusual crossover point between front sub and rear sub. Yeah, it looks like 53 Hertz or 54, something like that. They integrated pretty well, and we ended up with a very nice looking curve. Again, this is the part when people will question, Pete, what house curve do you use? Because there are so many house curves. this is going to be a struggle for many people, because you can go on forums, they will tell you to use this house curve, that house curve, and the biggest issue and limitation is that if you are on your own and you cannot compare what your microphone is actually doing, you have no idea what you're tuning to, because one microphone is going to require a completely different house curve than another mic. Most of Measurements microphones come with calibration, but even that you cannot quite rely on. So what I usually say, to tune linear from 250 hertz and up, or 300 hertz and up, and then apply at least 3 dB per octave at the bottom end, because you will need rise. And depending on the car, whether it's a sport car, that may require a higher rise like 4 dB or even 5 dB rise below 250 or 300 hertz. You will have to evaluate that at the end, how much rise you need, how much bass you need. If you tune this system fully linear, like from that point on down, it was fully straight, you would lack bass, because our hearing is lacking sensitivity at the bottom end. So you have to overcome that. You need more level gradually, and then you will hear it balanced. There's a house curve you need for competition when the cars are parked, engine is off. There's a different house curve you need for different competition formats, because some competition formats expect a cleaner, leaner bass line depending on the reference disc they have, and then some competition formats require a bit more bass. Usually I find Emma to require a very lean bass line, they would call it on point, very accurate bass line. Whereas for like a daily tune, I always add more, because when the car is on the road, you have road noise, you have engine noise, exhaust, everything else that comes in when you do 70-80 miles an hour. You will need more bass, because otherwise bass will be drawn out and you will lack it. But the starting point is to get to this stage when left and right speakers are in balance, timing is correct, then timing speaker pairs are correct, so everything works together in time and phase. And then this is now the point where you can do the fine tuning. This is now a clean canvas that you can do anything with. That's why we evaluate it with the owners at the end as well. And if they listen to certain musical genres, then from this clean canvas to make adjustments and make a separate tune. Even if some people online say that, no, you just need one tune and everything is going to sound great on it. I'm sorry, but it's bullshit. Sorry, guys. I know some of you will be offended by that, but it's not right. You can't have just a single tune and tell everybody that you don't need anything more than just a single tune and single preset, because sadly, if you have a correct tune, then you will notice the difference between recordings so much easier. That's when people will find that when you have an amazing recording, it will sound mind-blowing. You will be like, holy shit, I've never heard anything like that in my life. But you will also have the extreme opposite, when you will be like, oh, why is this song that I've known for so many years and I used to like this song and now I find it actually sounding pretty poor? It's because the studio work has been done poorly. Not everybody has the money to have an amazing studio. And some recordings will be very bass heavy, other recordings will be very weak, some recordings will be very shouty in the upper mid-range. Like now, if you see this response here that we have a bit less energy between, 2K and 5K, that's actually not necessarily a bad thing, because this system is not going to be so resolving and revealing in the range where usually most systems can easily become screamy and shouty. And it's not necessarily the system's fault. It's usually poor recording's fault. Because if I have a system that's fully linear, like for ultimate competition expectations, if it's linear, and if you play a well-recorded song that was also mastered well on a system that was linear in a studio, that's just going to sound natural and smooth and easy. Whereas if you put something on that was mastered in a studio where they didn't have the resolving power in the mid-range, so they could have more of that energy in the upper mid-range and the lower high frequency range without noticing it because the monitors were not revealing enough, then you will find that in your car it will sound screamy. So that's where usually this here now is not a problem. And for daily tunes, if I make a separate, I just call it a daily tune when you are on the road, when you drive and you want to listen to louder levels as well. Usually I make an intentional dip there between 2 and 5, 2 and 6K. You cut out, 2, 3 dB wide, and that definitely helps the system to sound more relaxing and enjoyable at higher levels. So that's another thing to keep in mind, guys. That's another reason why a single tune is not enough, never enough. And on top of that, if somebody is a bass head, somebody loves shitloads of bass, then I have another preset, usually I just call Party, where we will let your mid bass to play as much kick as possible. That's within the physical limitations of the driver. Push the front sub as much as possible, and then the rear sub as well, while they all stay in line with each other. Nothing is going to be more overpowering than one or the other. So you just let the system to deliver as much bass as possible, which will be very boomy for competition expectations. But if you want to have fun with genres where you have a lot of bass, like hip hop, electronic music, then why not? Some people are not enough with, not happy with a 10-inch sealed box. They want 212s or 215s, or somebody wants even something crazier. Like a few days ago, after Christmas, I shared a few shorts on Instagram, and I think it appeared on Facebook as well in our storyline on Pssound. And I showed Vio's system in progress, and he has a 24-inch sub in IB at the back. Oh yeah, you can have fun with that. You don't feel like you don't have enough bass, and it just travels through your body, and it gives beautiful sensation of bass. If that's something that you want, then you will need more rise at the system, and it will be great. So now I think we went into a pretty deep place when it comes to tuning. Now you should be able to see why I'm so passionate about this whole thing, why people have to understand why systems have to be tuned properly. And the biggest problem is that globally, I don't know many people who can tune systems to the highest level. There are many tuners who tune well, and they will definitely do a huge difference from where your system is compared to, if you listen to a before and after. I have a scaling system where I say that the factory system is usually 2 out of 10. 3 is if you have an aftermarket system that can play louder than the factory system, but it's still a mess and it's still not enjoyable to listen to. 4 is when it's still a mess, but you can turn it up and you can live with it just about. 5 is when you have signs of integration, the speakers play together, sub is not completely out of phase. Stage is still not perfect, but you have rough center image. Then you have 6 when you have a pretty well balanced system. Staging is showing now pretty good imaging, and everything is getting to a point where, okay, we want to be there. Most shops should get to a 6 out of 10. 7 is when the system is really performing well now. 8 is, that's what most of our cars deliver. They have to be at that level where they do an 8 out of 10. When speakers disappear, you don't listen to speakers anymore, you just listen to the music, you can relax, you can listen to anything at any level. That's a good 8 in my book. Anything above that, 8.5, 9 is, that's the holy shit category, where we get the reactions from people getting out of the car saying like, wow, amazing, mind-blowing, their tears come out, their hair is standing, they blow up when you play something crazy to them, when they say, holy shit, Pete, it's crazy, unbelievable, when they go home with unforgettable experience. That's the 8.5 and 9. That's where we want to be. But there are many tuners around who can do a big transformation, getting a car from a 2 or a 3 to a 6. And most people that I see struggling with tuning, they can't even get to a 6. They are somewhere between 4 and maybe at a 5. So I highly recommend, guys, even if you're not in the UK or you cannot see me globally when I travel, make sure to hunt somebody down who can tune, who has good reputation, and you give it a go. And ask them, can you please give me 100% guarantee that the system is going to perform? Because many people don't want to get their cars tuned because they feel like they are pushed to a financial investment, and then they will have to pay regardless of whether they like the end result or not. And that's a big problem. Some people also lose their trust in tuners when they go through so many people and the system still doesn't make them feel happy, and then they already paid so much money, they're like, what's the point? Yeah, some people then walk away after investing many thousands in the system and in the tunes as well, and then they are still unhappy. Then that's a bad place to be. But then some people find the right tuners, and then they find their happiness. Or there are people who just want to do it themselves. They already invested, you know, a lot of money, tens of thousands. I don't know why he wants to shut off when I have charger on. But, you know, some people just want to do it themselves, and they invest into the Pssound Masterclass. That's another option when you come to learn from me, and then you can do it all yourself. So guys, check out the tuning playlist on the channel. There are plenty of videos from the past. Check out the description for the link for Patreon. Then you can see more RTA evaluations to give you more insight and more understanding of what goes into it. And then check out also the training date list, because in 2025 I already have many dates and many locations globally. If you're very serious about it, if you're a shop owner or you're a competitor or a very serious DIYer and you want to be in control, you want to do it yourself, then that's the best way. You know, sign up, and then after that you'll be a happy man. Cool. Hopefully you like this video. Feel free to share it, guys, as I always say, because this is what really matters in car audio these days. DSP technology moved everything and it changed so much, but then most people can't use it and they get lost. They just play forever. And this is one of those occasions now that with Jonathan, we could, you know, just make this happen. And then, oh yeah, I'm sure he's going to comment on this video at some point. You will see that his car became completely transformed, as well as, you know, of course, earlier in the video, he talked about it firsthand. But sometimes even recording people's reactions right after they hear the systems, after a tuning session, they can't express their feelings so easily, especially in front of a camera. It's easier for them to write it down later. So yeah, probably we will see his feedback in the message section as well, guys. So that's it for this video. Hopefully you liked it, and hopefully I can help transform more and more systems for you guys, and you can be, you know, you can get there and you can be happy with your system finally. So this is it. Hopefully I see you in the next one. Take care.